I'm Dan McQuade. I'm the president of construction for AECOM. AECOM, if you're not familiar with it, is one of the largest infrastructure firms in the world. We design, build, finance, and operate physical assets, infrastructure assets, roads, bridges, buildings, telecommunications, all asset classes, energy across the spectrum. In terms of construction, we are one of the 5 largest contractors in North America and known for iconic projects. Built the World Trade Center towers, One Vanderbilt, the Rams Stadium in LA, and have had very successful relationships with Chinese clients and contractors, both as partners and as our clients. Looking forward to the panel and answering any questions or comments you have.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Shau Zhang, and I'm a partner at Ernst & Young US, and I'm leading the China inbound business for a firm in the US, also in the Americas, covers 31 countries. And I'm so happy to be here to learn from each other and share our experiences with everyone. And so our business is really helping our Chinese company from beginning to finish, and we can share more when we actually get into the panel. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stephen Tan. I'm the president of China Telecom Americas. I run the China Telecom's business operation here in US, Canada, and the whole Latin American continent. So first, thanks for CGCC give us opportunity in this launch time, provide lunchbox for all you guys. But don't get this wrong. Lunchbox delivery is not our main business here. It's not our core business. We're not competing here with Uber Eats. Our business basically is to facilitate the cross-Pacific telecommunication service. We have we basically serve the customer here for the U.S. company trying to do some business in China, or the Chinese enterprise like you guys set up your operation here in U.S. So we synchronize your infrastructure across the Pacific Ocean. Also, we run some consumer business. We call it MAO, based on the partner with U.S. major mobile carriers. So we serve the Chinese popular community, including the international students coming from China and local, Chinatown populations, speak Chinese with intensive communication requirement to China. So we're here to share the experience with you guys for the greenfield entry strategy for telco company. Maybe I'm also open for the questions during the Q&A session. Thank you so much.
My name is Jeff Zhao. I'm Vice President in charge of Global HR Affairs for BWI Group. BWI Group is based in Dayton, Ohio. We are not one of the bigger Dayton, Ohio Chinese companies, which is us. We're a smaller one, and we have operations in the United States in 3 major locations. One is Michigan, another Ohio. The third one is Greenfield, Indiana. Altogether, 2 years from now, we have 800 people. Now we have approximately 500 people, mostly engineers. And we got into the United States by 2009. We supplied to companies like Cadillac, and then we added Ford. And globally, we are the largest suspension provider to BMW, also to Ferraris and those companies. Basically, you can say we're a suspension parts and components supplier and a system integrator to the world's high-end automotive brands. Also, we have a great business, and which is a much smaller portion.
Great, thanks. I'm going to actually, for the first question, quote the report. Looking to the future, 48% of respondents are optimistic about the U.S. commercial environment over the next 3 years, and only 11% are pessimistic. That's pretty good, half. But then there's a caveat, and that is the data discussed in this report were collected in early 2018, prior to the most recent escalation in tension between the U.S. and China and trade and tariff matters. So, Dan, since you're close, I'm going to throw this one to you. How do you think that result would have changed today? if the data were collected?
So I'd say two things. We're seeing dramatic price increases on steel and aluminum, which are big components of construction projects already. So that's the one tangible thing we've seen. Steel, just raw steel, columns and beams before they're fabricated or installed are up 40% in 6 months, which is an astounding jump in prices. In terms of the trade war, or I shouldn't say trade war, trade tensions and all this rhetoric, it's probably the worst word to use, right? We haven't seen any real effect of that yet. I mean, of course it's going to be negative, the effect, right? It's going to be a negative effect on business and consumer business confidence, but we haven't really seen it. I feel like we're at a point in time and no one knows what this is going to look like a month from now. So I don't think it's had a big effect yet, but it may well.
All right. We'll probably get back to that a bit later, but I figured, I'm an economist by training, so I thought I would start with Jeff with something that's close to my heart, and that's jobs, right? There's a big conundrum right now in the U.S. in terms of, is there a skills mismatch, a skills gap? But where I wanted to start was, I think, in fact, somewhere in the survey, one of the companies mentioned that employment costs in the U.S. are 6 times higher than they are in China. So I was wondering what the economic rationale was for starting operations and hiring in the U.S. versus just doing it in China.
That's a very good question. But BWI is a tier 1 supplier, and as a tier 1 supplier, we just follow the OEMs. So wherever the OEMs go, we try to be closer to the OEM in order to maintain a reasonable supply radius. So we have practically 3 portions of the business: Asia, Europe, and United States. So in each of the places, we maintain about the same portion. In the United States, we have to be here because we serve people like General Motors. This company, previous to that is Delphi. Previous to Delphi is General Motors. So a lot of our business are from General Motors. We have to be here in order to supply General Motors business. A lot of the staff also, we have to have the engineer to be like a residential engineer or system engineer. Those are the people who have over the years and understand the General Motors business, understand their system. When we understand the system, we can work together with their engineers on all kinds of stuff because we have a lot of controlled products. The controlled products, we need to understand their vehicle performance, and we need to compile our own algorithms in order to be suitable to their products. They like our products because we really understand their product. We have to be here. It makes business sense as well.
I got it. And how many countries are you in based on that logic?
We are in practically 14 countries. We have a Paris tech center. Our largest tech center is in Krakow, Poland. In the United States, we have about 350 engineers and plus 100 management people. And in Shanghai and Beijing, we also have technical people.
Just as a curiosity out of an American, because this would make me happy, are there any American-made parts in a Ferrari?
Ferrari, okay. Actually, I think no. I'm trying to answer your question because Ferraris use their suspension. All the suspension systems are from BWI. We have the kind of a technology is called Magnoride. Nobody else supplied. But if you want to say it's made in USA, that's a global question. We designed it. But the chips may be manufactured in Europe. And now, for example, we are building a new plant in Indiana. We also shipped some of the controlled products from Chihuahua, Mexico to Indiana now. Later this year, we'll start production, some of the things.
I
can simply say some of the hardwares will also be produced in the United States for products like Ferrari and Cadillac.
I'm going to say yes. Yeah, all right, thanks.
Well, it's very difficult. It depends on which part.
I just bought a drill. It said assembled in America with global parts. So it's trade is a very complicated subject.
A lot of design from United States.
Yeah. Shau, I'm going to move on to you, and I'm going to skip around a little bit to give everybody some equal time. It's sort of a broad question. You have a lot of experience, and you deal with clients regularly, I'm guessing every day. What do you see as the biggest challenges and opportunities for Chinese companies planning on doing business in the U.S. right now, or doing business in the U.S. right now?
And I have been doing helping the Chinese company doing business in the U.S. over the almost 10 years now. I think I would say at this moment, it is one of the most challenging period right now, and given the older regulatory environments here and from both countries, and so it's very, very challenging, and everybody stand by and on the sideline to see what's going on. A lot of company already being basically hit by the tension, the trade tension right now from the both side of it. So I think my suggestion is, I think for the long run, and I'm sure everyone will be agree with me, both countries will work out a solution, and will create a win-win situation. Just a matter of time, right? But at the meantime, at this moment, and it's kind of out of control right now, and but people try to figure out what to do, and it's very hard. It's very hard. And we were just joking around. It's a teenager behavior right now, or people saying, "Oh my God, you give a credit." It's like a toddler behavior right now. So I would just you have to be basically getting close to the situation and monitor the situation. Try to be figured out how to react as much as fast as you can, as your global plan. So ask your advisors and seek helps. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll come back to more on that. I'm going to move to Steve for a moment. Steve, China Telecom moved to the U.S. when times were a friendlier environment, a business environment, I guess you could call it. So I was wondering if you could tell a little bit about China Telecom's experience entering the U.S. market and some of the really important lessons you learned along the way that you might want to share that could help people in the room.
Sure. We are the first Chinese carrier, coming to U.S. We started our U.S. business starting from year 2007. Yes, I agree. That back to that period of time, maybe the environment is much more friendly than right now. I wouldn't say describe it as a toddler, things, but I would say you see too much impulsive decision at the specific time. People on that level making decisions should be thinking much more systematically instead of continuously throw out impulsive decision. That's simply just wrong. So I agree with Shau's point that I believe in the future, in the long run, things are going to work out. But in the short run, of course, it's going to impact the business, a negative impact. Before I get on stage, I shared a report with Shau. It's just coming out, today. I think for the same period of time, year 2018, the FDI from China into U.S. down compared to last year, 92%, only $1.8 billion, including all the acquisition, including all the greenfield, investment in U.S. China Telecom, we come into U.S. In the beginning, our purpose is just for the saving the cost, because during that period of time, the internet is booming in China, and we pay a lot of cost for the U.S. carriers to get all the internet content, cross-Pacific into China. We view this, the intercontinental connectivity as one of our core competence we should establish by ourselves. That's why in the beginning, we set up our own POP in Los Angeles. We decided to apply this greenfield entry strategy to give us the full control of. I know that during the survey report, Sam just mentioned there. I think one of the top reasons for greenfield entry strategy is the control of your asset. But for us, it's not just a control of the asset; it's a control of the service quality, because Trans-Pacific communication, relying on all the submarine cables, we prefer to invest, have some, our own investment on the cable, put our money there, so we can have the organic, capacity on those submarine cables. This is kind of like a consistent strategy along through these years. We continuously invest all these trans-Pacific submarine cables with different routes. Last year, there's maybe you heard of that. There's a cable called Faster. We actually cooperated with Google. I mean, in these days, you don't see too much, U.S. carrier actually is willing to put money under, Pacific Ocean to build up the submarine cable. All the partners we happen to have in this side of U.S. Pacific Ocean is Facebook. The most recent one, NCP, is Microsoft. The incoming one, Hong Kong American. Actually, the partner from U.S. side is Facebook. So we decide to use this greenfield, give us the full control of the backbone capacity, so we can ensure the quality of the service. Because all the customer we are serving here, both for the MNC customer from U.S. enterprise community going to China to business, or the Chinese enterprise customer coming here, this backbone connectivity is very critical. I believe they run a lot of mission critical application over that. Secondly, I think it gives us the flexibility to start small, then scale up, to enhance our coverage. We started in year 2000. We only have one POP in Los Angeles. Now we have like more than 10 POP here in US, and we continue growing. Globally, we also apply this strategy. Right now, we are in more than 30 countries. We have 70 POPs across the globe. This is all our own. The only missing part is not we call the online resource from A to Z. I mean, for end-to-end service to the customer is the US last mile. Why didn't we do we do the greenfield strategy there? Because this is a merit of the US telecom market. The last mile market actually is very transparent. You have a lot of service, some of the nationwide players like AT&T, Verizon, some of the small metro players. I mean, so you don't have too much transaction cost. There's no immediate necessity for you to internalize it. So for the U.S. last mile part, we're working closely with our partners. We stand neutral. We can buy with low price or with higher quality. So then from end to end, we can provide the better service to our customer. That's basically the foundation of our strategy.
Cool. I had to put a internet cable in my house the other weekend, and I found that to be incredibly difficult from going from one room to another. So I couldn't imagine what that's like going across the ocean. I wish we were having a panel to discuss that. But we'll come back. So Dan, I'm curious about how your experience has been partnering with Chinese companies in the U.S. and how that's changed over the years. What trends that you might have noticed?
Well, to start with, we're a global business and have a big business in both China, Hong Kong, and so we have existing relationships with a number. That was the start of the relationship. Most of the big Chinese clients or partners was AECOM in China and Hong Kong, doing a lot of work with them. So when they came to the U.S., they had a familiarity with us. For the most part, no smart business people or companies show up and say they want to be your partner, right? I mean, there's a process of gaining their trust. So there was a point probably 3 years ago where a third of our backlog was from I would say Asian, with the vast majority of it being Chinese clients, which is pretty astounding that a third of our backlog in the United States was for Chinese clients. So through that process of very large projects with Chinese clients, I think we gained their trust, right? I mean, where very often it started out as a bid or a competitive selection to be hired, and then really just through hard work and doing a good job and treating them fairly, and putting the time and effort in to build a relationship, which is time consuming, right? I mean, it involves a whole lot of travel and involves a whole lot of getting to know your clients. A number of the relationships morphed into real partnerships. The most recent one, or the best example, is Greenland, which is a large Chinese real estate company. We've built, I believe, 6 projects for 6 different developments in Los Angeles, New York, and in London. And then 2 weeks ago, I was in Shanghai, and we signed a memorandum of understanding with Greenland, with their construction arm, to look at projects jointly around the world. So, that process, though, started off in L.A. and then New York and then London, and it really, it took time, and it took a lot of work on both our side and Greenland's side to get over the cultural differences, to get to know each other, and to get to understand how we both work. So, what I've seen is that it's the process really is based on, old-fashioned hard work and building relationships.
Okay. And Jeff, I'm going to go back to you. I actually noticed when I was just jotting down questions, I have about 10 times more questions for you on jobs than I do anyone else. But, I went and looked at your website before we came on stage, and I noticed that you're looking to hire quite a few positions in the U.S. right now, a lot of which are engineers. It said that there's skilled labor in the U.S. is becoming in short supply with the unemployment rate as low as it is, et cetera. Are you finding it more difficult to hire right now in the U.S., and are you having to pay more to hire? What trends are you seeing in that regard?
Both. We have been experiencing really a hard time to find the right talent. And for some of the areas, for example, a recent example is electrical engineer, and before that is a software engineer. Sometimes we have to do extra. Actually, this year, we allocated a lot more money to give people big chunk raises in the engineering area. And for those areas we couldn't find, we'll do with the second choice sometimes. And we offer H-1Bs, and we offer relocations. We make a lot of extra offers, especially for people who are going to work in our Michigan location. And almost like, I don't want to quote numbers, but we are going to give them a lot more money this year in order to, have people, continue. Our competitors in the auto industry, there are a lot of investment going into autonomous driving, going to new energy vehicles. And so we are competing with those hot money. They are hiring a lot of people who are in the software, in algorithms, or in anything that goes with autonomous driving. For us, we have to, compete with them and ask people to continue work with BWI. I think this problem must be very prevalent in the auto industry now.
Okay. Yeah, we don't think we are facing difficulty in finding the right talent here in the U.S. market. I think in the U.S. market, the labor market actually is well configured. For us, in our case, we have we create job more than 200. Only less than 10 people. We actually, is expat from China to U.S. The rest of the whole employee base is hired locally. So for us, we think the market here, you can find the right talent. Very
so in
easily.
telecom, you're still finding the right talent.
Exactly.
And in the auto sector,
different industry.
Yeah.
I think.
Last week, I went to Silicon Valley. I made offer on the spot to graduate from Bloomington, Indiana. And she's working in Silicon Valley as an intern. So I made the offer. She says she's going to consider it. Then she declined because there's a local company offered her a job. She'd like to stay in the Sunshine State.
Geographic areas make a huge difference. Yeah. Washington and D.C. shouldn't be a problem. West Coast, East Coast, if we get into the central area, will be challenging, yeah.
So Shau, I don't know if you would know, maybe in telecom this would be prevalent. Are any Chinese companies looking at possibly working arrangements that would involve people who maybe don't have a manual test, more coding test for working from home, or to solve that geographic problem? Is that something?
I think it depends on the level, though, right? So if you're staff one, interns, and anywhere, like senior level under, maybe really wanted to work, other workload location. It's very hard to, still need to supervise, supervised and make sure you organize, get a routine going, right? So I think if you really work until at the senior manager level or at least the manager level up, and then you maybe have a more responsibility, particularly market facing, other stuff, and then you can work remotely. Yeah. So that's our company philosophy.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. Actually, our company apply the same philosophy. For any people on certain, above middle management level, you have to show yourself in the office. Yeah. But for the operation level, even for account manager, for a sales engineer, or for a customer service agent, they can choose the flexibility working home if we don't have an office there. Also, we hired, for example, we used to have people in Detroit, but we don't have any office there. We just allow him to working from home. We have people working in Miami. We don't have any office right now there. We only have POPs there. But we allow the sales working from home so as can bring business, working with the customer community.
I think they have a microphone that's working.
Okay, great.
Yeah, one thing may be relevant. I'm not sure, maybe not relevant, but now for the employee who hold a H-1B visa, and they have to report which location you're gonna be. Particularly, you go outside of your permanent work location, go out to the client side, you have to report first before you can go. So it's getting very, very challenging right now. So that's another thing we maybe have to voice up, yeah, particularly for foreign students and working in the U.S. now.
I have a lot of techie friends who have never worked in an office, and they work from home, and they do shockingly well. Dan, I would ask you a question, and this is kind of out of sheer curiosity, just for myself. At what point does a Chinese company thinking about investing in the U.S. Actually call you and say, hey, we need help, or we need a partner?
That's a great question, and it's a huge range. I mean, a lot of our clients we've worked with many times call us as they're looking for investments, make sure they understand zoning, make sure they understand all the local issues, the approval process, the entitlement, the sort of building envelope scale that's allowed. Then there's other clients who call us, after they've got themselves in a bunch of trouble, right, where they've made an investment and it's not what they expected. That's a thing that over time has improved, where we saw, probably 7 or 8 years ago, a number of clients that went out and made investments and didn't understand the local market, didn't understand sort of the geopolitics of it and the local ordinances, and but had already made an investment, and then at that point we're trying to fix the problem they got into. Greenland, when they went to LA, called us early on. We did a site analysis. We understood the building code. We understood, the politics at LA, which is our headquarters, and gave them a roadmap of, how to get this permitted and what they could get permitted. So, I would say that over time we've seen more and more of our clients looking for local advice earlier than later, and that's a good thing, right? Because otherwise you're starting off with an investment where they expected a return and it's going to be less because of the because of local complications.
Thanks, and that actually, Shau, that brings me to a question I was going to ask you. What do you think the biggest surprises that Chinese businesses face when they start entering the U.S., and what is the best piece of advice that you could give them from a potentially compliance or regulatory standpoint?
I would think that the big surprise is really no surprise, because I think all our Chinese companies are getting much, much smarter now and mature and also sophisticated now. And everyone knows, and the U.S. is a very well established country, and also, in terms of system-wise, in terms of law and regulatory environment is very well already here. But however, when the Chinese company coming down to the U.S., and normally is a business go first, and particularly in actually the beginning, make sure we have a business and make a money and make a profit moving forward. But however, sometimes needed to sit back, take a look at it, the entire picture, and over to an entire enterprise's risk point of view. And it's very important that you are doing well in the business, not only like that, and also you want to make sure you manage the reputation risk and also regulatory risk. And there's a lot of lesson to learn. And I think the tendency is we Chinese company we learn as we actually go, right? So 我们中国人话说摸着石头走路，摸着石头过河哈。So it is something we really have to do it, and we also has to. In the U.S. it's very simple. If you want to start in business, you gotta make sure everything have to set up first, and the regulatory compliance, everything you have to be set up in the very, very beginning. Not like, okay, we have a business, then we have to do it. And that's already have a huge surprise. I would say no surprise, because we know this is a very regulatory country, right? And before you know it, you got a huge fine. And from banking perspective, from sanction, very large telecom company got a huge fine because of a sanction issue, and so regulatory issue, and so there's a huge lesson to learn. I think now the Chinese companies are really getting smarter and mature, particularly from the attention from their Chinese company, parent company level, pay huge attention to that. I'm sure we're getting better and better, and the surprise is you got to get everything set up, just like every other U.S. company. If you want to be a U.S. citizen and a U.S. corporate citizen, and you have to be acting as a U.S. company locally, become a local company. Yeah, thank you.
A little bit of self-promotion. If anybody is in financial services and is starting a company here or has a company here and needs help making sure you're on the same page with all regulation, we have a product that can help you at Bloomberg, so give me a call.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, EY will help you, working with you on that. Thank you.
We all want to make sure you succeed. But no, this goes back. So this is interesting. So I spent a lot of time in China. I lived in Hong Kong for a while, spent most of my time in mainland China. And when I was speaking with U.S. CEOs, American CEOs of companies in China, one of the things that they would tell me a lot is that they would spend a lot of time rationalizing to their boards why they have their businesses in China and why they're doing what it is they're doing. So I'm wondering more from Jeff and Steve, because you guys are in that position here, what are the conversations like with headquarters back in China, and are there any concerns in terms of how business is done here, or how much you have to pay employees, or you mentioned you have to give big raises. What are those conversations like?
Hello. They do ask the questions. I mean, the Beijing headquarters, but they trust us. And one of the advantages for us is that although I'm a Chinese face, but I've been in the United States for 30 years, so I understand the United States and understand the Americans. So when I talk, I tend to bridge the differences. I explain why in the US we have to provide such benefits, and we have to, benchmark to the market and all that kind of things. And the Beijing leaders, because I use Chinese language, I know the terms. I used to work for Xinhua, so my Chinese is better than English. So I can explain, for US executives working in the United States, if they try to explain the whys to the leadership in Beijing, whose native is Chinese language, through translators, that's very difficult. For the past few years, I've seen such communication so difficult. Its translation cannot be done word by word. There's a lot of culture behind, a lot of background behind. So you have someone who understands both languages, you can explain pretty well, and they understand. And once trust is established, and they let us do the things, like for example, when I'm almost finished this year's merit program. That means we gave raises globally to our employees, their annual raise. And they don't ask a lot of details. I just give them a very simple report. We are within budget. A lot of the details are taken care of. We give better rewards to people who perform. And that's it. They don't interfere a lot.
Is your budget given to you in RMB or in dollars?
The budget is done each year in the fall, and we'll work several months for the budget. The budget starts with the overall bookings. We call it the bookings, the business bookings. Then working from that, we'll work on the cost, working on foreign exchange. Then from there, we establish the space that you can work on people cost. Then from there, it's a consensus established according, across all the 14 sites all over the world. Some of the sites are more difficult than United States. Like in Poland, we have a solidarity union. Like in UK, we also have trade unions. We have to talk to their people as well. But it's okay.
Right, fingers crossed. I'm going to try to turn it on. Okay. So, Steve, this question's for you. So one of the things that struck me in the report was in terms of M&A or investment strategies, I should say, that 38% of Chinese companies were using greenfield investment, while 28% were using M&A strategies. What's the rationale one would use to pick a strategy, and what would the benefit be of each?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Actually, I also want to touch base on your last question to Jeff. So basically, the conversation between here, our American continent operation with our Hong Kong headquarters and the Beijing headquarters is basically where's the growth. The reason why China Telecom decided to choose this greenfield entry strategy consistent across the globe, including U.S., because we want to show the long-term commitment to our customer, to the market, that China Telecom we have this ambition to be, to coming from a domestic carrier into a regional, eventually goes to global as a global carrier, as a significant global carrier players. That's the rationality behind our strategy across the globe. So we don't have a urgent for profit in the overseas market at this minute, and basically it's much more focused on top line instead of the bottom line. So that's why back to your question last time, for the conversation for the budget planning, we do U.S. budget with our corporate headquarters. As far as we can deliver the growth, there's no question for me to ask for extra payroll budget or extra marketing budget or even extra operation cost. We buy a lot of facilities here. Some of them using capex every year. On average, CT spend like between 10 to 20 million capex investment spending here in U.S. to build up gradually build up our presence across the whole continent, backbone connecting west coast to the east coast of the United States across Pacific. Now we're even reaching beyond from U.S. down to Latin America. So those type of budget planning, I don't think I have any question in terms of asking for budget as far as we can deliver the growth. So all the time they ask us is which area can you find to deliver us the growth. For example, most recently our focus is much more on data center side because we see the trend is coming from China. A lot of internet giants coming to U.S. set up their cloud platform, which is in demand for high density of data center service. So then, as far as I can deliver the customer's requirement, I don't think I can. There's no difficulty for me to ask for budget. That's in line with our long run strategy.
So I know that the Chinese government released a new set of guidelines somewhat recently on what sectors to focus on and to avoid in terms of M&A activity. Were there any guidelines in the sense of how the investment strategy? Do they prefer M&A versus greenfield, or were there no guidelines in that area?
I don't think my knowledge, I don't think there is the guideline on entry mode. they don't have a preference. Our government don't have a preference in terms of guideline, which way you prefer, greenfield or MA. I do believe they have some, guideline for some certain area, which, they think is not quite, encouraged by the government to do the overseas expansion. But I believe the telecom service, IT service definitely is encouraged by, multiple policymakers.
And I know I think it was 2016 was when you had the big ramp up in M&A investment that led to the introduction of the guidelines, and then you saw a big fall after that. So you mentioned a figure for 2018 that it was down even from last year. So
yeah, that's the report I read this morning. 1.8 billion for the same period of time this year compared with last year, which is 92% down.
And does anyone have a view on where they see that going for the rest of the year, be it from the clients you're talking to? Is it going to pick back up?
I think it's going to be still like that for a while, for another 6 months or maybe 12 months.
And I don't know if you have insight on that, but I'm wondering, is that a U.S. specific trend, or is China outward investment to other countries, excluding the U.S., seeing the same downward trend, or is that kind of constant from where it was last year?
I would think overall will be slow down because the Chinese government foreign currency control policy, and as I know, starting losing up right now, but overall it's slowed down compared to over the 2016. But I think particularly in the U.S., because on the political, situation here, and from the Trump, administration giving really tightened CFIUS examination and all that, so will slow down as well. So I would think it's going to be giving all the trade attention, everything, the whole situation will slow down for. That's my own view for another 6 months or 12 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
yeah, sure.
That's exactly what we're seeing, is almost very little, if any, investments from China. I think it's just waiting to see what happens with political climate. So we're seeing almost no activity right now.
This is actually a good segue. So last year I was doing some events, and I got to meet a lot of representatives from Chinese companies in the U.S. A lot of them were focused some way, directly or indirectly, on construction. And there was an immense sense of euphoria when it came to potential infrastructure spending in the U.S. and the positive impact that could have, because certainly the Chinese know how to build infrastructure. What's the stat that there's been as much concrete laid in China over the past couple of years as the past 100 years in the U.S.? Obviously, most of that is because of infrastructure. Where has that gone today? Does anyone have a... Yeah, I think, Dan, that's probably good.
So we bet heavily on infrastructure through acquisitions and staffing, and expected more U.S. infrastructure spending, particularly at a federal level, than's happened. I mean, there's been no real action or legislation on a federal level, and it doesn't appear like there's going to be anytime soon. The only good news is we are seeing states, individual states, who have to address the aging infrastructure. I think as the federal government hasn't done anything, some U.S. states are starting to step up. California, huge bond bill passed, a lot of infrastructure spending. The state of Washington, very strong spending. New Jersey is ramping up spending. So you're starting to see states react, I think simply because they have to, because their infrastructure is crumbling. So that's, a little bit of good news. But on a federal level, we're seeing just total gridlock, right? I mean, we're not seeing any ability to address the infrastructure problems of the country.
Well, the interesting question, you might not know the answer to this. I apologize if it's... Okay, good. So I heard that from, it was the Buy America, Hire America debate I was having with someone a couple months back. And they mentioned to me that on a federal level, that's basically the policy, that iron and steel needs to be sourced from America. But when you start dealing with infrastructure on a state and more local level, the laws aren't necessarily the same. I know there was a big infrastructure project that a Chinese company did in New York, and they were able, because it was a New York project, not a federal project, able to source steel from China and some workers from China. Or actually, the workers might have all been American, but definitely the steel came from overseas. So is that potentially if it's coming from a state level, is that a positive for Chinese companies?
I don't. I mean, my understanding is that if it's federally funded, which most infrastructure has some amount of federal funding, that Buy American and American Goods are part of it, unless some states have somehow figured out a way around that. But I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to be a major relief.
Got it. You know, Shau, a question I wanted to pose to you. You've been, I think you mentioned you've been doing this very proactively for the past 10 years. What is the biggest change you've seen from when you started to today in terms of the companies that you deal with from China?
Yeah, just I mentioned in the beginning, and 10 years founded 10 years ago, and compare 10 years later is much smarter and mature, more organized. And I remember way back when first Chinese company, this state-owned company, coming to our Oklahoma, United States, and I got a call from the one of the Chinese company, and they are purchasing something. They are try to settle down, just try to figure out to settle down. And I say, okay, do you have a visa yet? Do you have a? Oh, I'm still working on B1, B2 visa, and I'm still working, buy everything, try to set up an office, but I only have my personal credit card, and I only have a 2,000 limit. Can you help me pay this and figure it out? So it's just a lot of a basic, right? That's 10 years ago, and maybe 8 years ago, and then now, and I think there's a lot of due diligence going on, and I know Chinese company really try to has a courage, try to figure it out, grab a business opportunity when it's come, right? And it is important, but now become a really more sophisticated, and try to organize a global plan where in a global picture, what I supposed to do in the U.S. in the bigger picture, right? And how I gonna mobilize my people and my equipments and everything, supply chain, everything. So it's a very organized, and but still now a lot of companies still are falling into some regulatory challenges, and which we never see anything like that before. So always challenging here, there, but I'm sure Chinese company now is ready and to conquer the challenges and solve the problems now.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Quick comment here. From the service provider perspective view, when you look at our customer portfolio 10 years ago and now, there is a huge difference. 10 years ago, mostly the customer, the Chinese and we serve is the big giant, state-owned enterprise. They already have a very good position in China. They're looking for opportunity overseas. Now you see more and more. First, the private sector is much more active right now. Secondly, you see a lot of small business. It's not just the big, the big one in China. Some of them on very small scale, they also looking for overseas business opportunity. Some of them are interesting because they are in the very early stage. They only have like 1 or 2 point of presence in some certain China cities. But before they have a nationwide domestic China full deployed business operation, they're looking for overseas opportunities here in U.S. That's interesting part from observer. That's the trend we observed.
Yeah, one thing is even though Chinese companies doing much better right now, but still compared to bigger global picture, U.S. business is still very small piece. So there's a long way to actually go now.
I'm going to ask one more question before I open it up to the audience to see if there's any Q&A, and that is, given the current environment, the rhetoric against China, is there any stigma, or is it harder to hire as a Chinese company versus your American competition, be it BWI, be it China Telecom? Does it make it harder to hire, in your opinion, or is a job a job?
For our scenario, no. Actually, I just had a meeting with 1 month ago with all the new hires. We just hired close to 10 people in like 6 or 5 cities. For some of the sales engineers, some of the knock engineers, shift engineers. I tell them one thing. deep down inside, we are not different because we are the Chinese guy trying to go global, coming here into a very different environment. You're a U.S. guy, you can work very comfortably for a U.S. company, but you choose to work for a Chinese company, which means you also have the ambition to embrace the world outside U.S. So deep down inside, we find some cultural common sense there. I really enjoy this type of spirit in terms of the labor market there.
Jeff, you have a view on that, especially in Ohio?
BWI is a small company, so we have our problem. And first of all, we don't have that kind of a problem which like a smear campaign can hurt us because we've been operating like American company. In about 500 people based in the United States, there's not one single executive sent from China, not one single engineer sent from China. All of them U.S. hired, all of them, including me, all of them. So it runs like a U.S. company. It has all the benefit and the salary levels, everything competitive to the market. The only exception is that we're competing with General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, Toyota, those guys. And it's very difficult. Yeah. When they think, oh, BWI, first, I may consider Bosch, I may consider Conti, the German company the best. Then they may consider American companies. Then the BWI is on a par with Japanese and those companies.
Until they find out they're building Ferraris.
Oh, Ferraris
Yeah.
in Europe.
Yeah.
Systems
Yeah.
here.
So with that, I want to open it up to the audience to see if there's any questions before we have to stop. If you do ask a question, I just ask that you introduce yourself before asking. So over here we have some questions. The microphone's coming to you. Oh, sorry, they're back there first. No, go. Yeah, sure. No, you're first, then she could go second. You're good.
Okay, my name is Leung Wai-on. I'm from Hong Kong. We make no, it's not.
It was work.
Yeah. My name is Leung Wai-on from Hong Kong. We make a wastewater washing machine for construction industry. So although we got the award from Bloomberg, the Asian Innovation Award, the Construction Innovation Award from America, or the approval from Department of Ecology from Washington State, we still find that there is the construction industry in America is very conservative. And most of the people don't have the idea is that the Chinese can provide green solutions for construction industry. I think it happened to some other products that make in China that people believe if we are not doing good in China, maybe we cannot provide good services. So, and that's why we are moving into the First Nation reserve water filtration area. And then we found that it is even more embarrassing. People asking us to don't bring in your box and to make people embarrassing in America. So they're asking us to make it in here. So, and that is my experience. And I just sent in an invitation to Dane by LinkedIn, and I hope that he can help me to solve this problem.
Thanks, but that wasn't really a question. So then,
no, it's a big problem to change the concept of the American consumer to the Chinese products. What I mean, we are from Hong Kong. We are a little bit easier to come in here than because we supply to AECOM in Australia, in Malaysia, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, but still, America is not that easy.
I mean, back in the 70s, people thought, Honda Civic was garbage in the U.S., and now it's like one of the most, at one point, in the Toyota Camry was the most driven car on the road. So sometimes it's just a matter of people adjusting and time. And I think over time, good products will prevail. But that's my own 2 cents.
But my problem is I just reached 60, so I have no more years to wait.
Well,
we got to move quick then.
Yeah.
So it is a conservative industry, right? I mean, construction and design businesses are thin margin businesses where if you make an error, you get a really big downside. So that does drive a conservative atmosphere. But I'm happy to help you. I'd be curious to hear about your product and see if we can figure out how to accelerate it before you're 61 and get some of it going in the United States.
I hope that you help me to pay for my ticket.
All right. We had a question
come
up
here.
here before, in the front, right here. Did you still have a question?
Thank you for the opportunity. And I'm Zhang Qi with China's Taixing Media. And I got two questions, basically, all regarding technology. One is, we see a trend of technology cooperation. We see Congress is investigating Google's cooperation with Chinese companies like ZTE or Huawei, citing national security threats. I'm wondering, I think Steve also mentioned their cooperation with Google. So I'm wondering, how do you see this technology cooperation with U.S. companies? Would you say that will be a trend of more and more difficult? And secondly, about legislation front is about CFIUS reform. There's a legislation called FIRMA, and I think the initial version include a greenfield investment also be covered by CFIUS review. I'm not sure whether the latest version has or not, but from the 38% of greenfield investment from China. So would you say if that becomes law, that will be a very long-term effect? So I'm just wondering how you see this. Will you say this has long-term effect that Chinese investment will be down for really long-term? Thanks.
I can address your first question. As a service provider, I mean, yeah, technology, you see technology there cover a lot of areas, but from a telco service provider standpoint, we don't see any barriers in terms of working closely with Google, Facebook, or Microsoft, Amazon, to provide them global IT infrastructure running on our global backbone network, submarine cable, terrestrial cable, all the POPs, connections. We don't see any problem yet. Also, we don't see any problem in terms of working closely with the U.S. carriers. All the major U.S. carriers, they have POP, set up in our gateway city, Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou. Verizon actually have 4. AT&T also have 4 in China, working closely with China Telecom. They use our domestic network to serve their customer like IBM, like other U.S. multinational enterprise companies. On the reverse side, here in U.S., we have very good relation with all the major carriers. I mean, I can give you one of the example. Most recently, we 3 years ago, we launched a consumer business here. All the business we mentioned there is just for a B2B side. We still running a B2C side, a mobile MVO, we call it MVO mobile service. There's no difficulty for us to find a right partner here in one of the major U.S. carriers. I mean, let us to writing on their physical network and marketing our own brand to provide the mobile service.
And I believe for the rest of your question, there's someone who's going to be speaking at the reception who's better positioned to answer the second part. So we have time for one more question, if anybody has one. If not, I'll ask. Oh, wait, over here. Oh, 2 more. If they're short, we could try to get both in.
Hi, this is Zhou Xiong from Sina Finance, and I have a question for any of the panelists. So Chinese enterprises have been slowing down on the progress of making investment in the United States since last year, and recent policies are limiting the foreign investment in both countries. Do you think there's going to be a larger scale impact for Chinese enterprises investing in the United States? Thank you.
Yeah, we sort of already talked about this before, right? But I would just talk about, the question you talk about CFIUS and are all related. I think I would say, only have 2 years left, right? And this turn. And so we have to be optimistic, right? And we have to be positive, and you never know. The whole situation now is zigzag, and yes now, and next day is no, and everybody see those phenomena. Just talking about U.S. North Korea summit, right? We going, we're not going, we're going, we're not going, right? So, but anyway, good news is only 2 years left, and everything could have changed. We have to be positive.
And I'll add something. I think that the business community is playing a more important role than they have in a very long time to help set policy So I think that if businesses are banding together and say this is the right policy, this is something we should do or something we shouldn't do, I think that could go a long way to influencing what's happening. I usually say in Washington, but I'll say here over the course of the next couple of years. So was it short? Okay, yeah, last question.
Yeah, okay. I'm Stephen Han from CCPIT US Rep Office. I have a quick question for Dan. You just mentioned several pleasant cooperation between your company, AECOM, and Chinese real estate companies in the US. So would you please touch upon the China's Belt and Road Initiative? So what's the challenge or the opportunities for the third-party cooperation between American construction company like your company and Chinese investment in the Belt and Road Initiative areas? So the challenges and the opportunities. Thank you.
So there's enormous opportunities for a firm like ours on Belt and Road, but the problem is most of the projects are in countries that we can't operate in on our own, right? I mean, if you look at where the major projects are going to be, they're pretty tough environments for a U.S. company or for our company, and that's one of the I think that'll be an opportunity from these relationships we've worked hard to develop with big Chinese owners and contractors, because as the U.S. investment goes down, that's a prime example of with Greenland, we're going to focus on Belt and Road, where they are set up in those countries. We have tremendous technical expertise, design expertise. So we think a partnership is the way for us to look at those opportunities, and certainly not on our own to go to Pakistan or Myanmar, or those are just not countries we're set up to build in.
Okay, great. Thank you very much to all the panelists. I certainly learned a lot. I hope everyone in the audience learned a lot, and definitely make sure you read this report. All of the questions were based on issues that were raised in it, and these were the real world examples, so you got to hear from the practitioners. So thank you very much, and I hope everybody enjoys the reception.